Hello and welcome guys to the closing stages of the London Chess Classic. I've got 3 games to show you today and then I'll update you on the standings right at the end. We're going to waste no time. The first one is a very fun one. So Luke McShane yet to win in this tournament in his home nation. Let's see if he can try and press Andrei Volokitin here. We start off with e4, c5, the Sicilian defence, knight f3, d6, bishop b5, all very normal stuff so far. We're just going to sort of skip ahead to about this point. a4 just played, lashing out from McShane. Bishop b7, d4, and you can just feel a storm brewing. There's so much tension here, this weird little bullhorn structure here, whatever you want to call this. Take the pawn, take the pawn, take the pawn. Knight c3, hitting the bishop. Bishop drops back. Volokitin temporarily up a pawn, but can it be maintained? In this position there is one move to maintain equality, a single move here. Knight takes f7 from Luke McShane. Naturally, king forced to take. And again, one move to maintain equality from McShane. Rook e6 now. Oh my god. Naturally, bc3 now the only move from Volokitin. Another only move now from McShane. Bishop c4 guarding his rook. Setting up a little kebab skewer. And this time a brilliancy from Volokitin. Bishop d5. That bishop is free. Don't forget the queen all the way back here. That's looking directly at it. McShane obliges, of course. Knight takes, queen takes. Again, one move to maintain equality. Knight b6. Oh my god. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Can't take. You're just hanging your queen. Queens are staring directly at each other. You can't do a discovered check again because you'll just lose your queen. One move now. Another brilliancy to maintain equality. Rook e7. The idea being, of course, it's a double check. Only way king gets out is the king takes. We see bishop g5, king e8. Another only move, rook e1. Bishop e7 only move. Queen c6 only move, king f7. And the players repeat moves. If someone can inform me on whether this is a known drawing line, if this is something that's been done before, I don't know. I should check the database, ideally. They've made the draw very quick. Both have more time than with what they started. But I've never seen anything quite like it. 5 brilliant moves in one game. That is incredible. And on to the next game. Hans Niemann versus Matthias Bartel. Just skip the opening stage as it was relatively uninspiring, but in this position we see queen b3 from Niemann. Idea is simple, want that pawn, gonna take that pawn. But of course, as of right now, it's protected both times, so Bartel does as any sane man would and goes king h8, which is the best move, and just gives the pawn away. I can't explain that one, I'm afraid. Queen f6, hitting the bishop, bishop drops back, g5, rook e2. Slightly inaccurate from Hans, not the most critical response, because now g4 comes crashing through. We see Bartel just gaining a bit of an initiative here. Knight e1, Niemann drops back, h5, knight f1, h4. Oh, he's just crashing through. Now queen d1, knight e7, pieces just wriggling around, arming themselves for the attack that's about to ensue. c6, a random move. g3, bit of damage limitation there from Niemann. d5, bishop drops back. Bishop e6, knight g2, knight g6, take, d4, e4, closing up in the middle of the board, and rook a4 from Niemann, completely disregarding this little square over here and trying to get something going instead on the queen side. Now Bartel capitalises here and goes h3. He decides now is the time to crash through. Niemann drops back. Bartel does the same. Rook b4 hitting that pawn, but it is already guarded. And then we see rook a c8 and bishop c2 this time. See, the bishop here had a target, it had something to work towards. But it does make you wonder what the point of this bishop is here. It's completely closed down, and when you can't get to this pawn, you're not going to ever open this bishop up. And you're certainly not going to be able to play f3 anytime soon. So we see bishop f6, queen d1, bishop d8, bishop h6. Nice little counterweight move, hit the rook, try and take some space around the king. And here, Niemann takes the bishop on g5 that was presented to him. The knight jumps forward. You would think a good move for Bartel, getting the knight into these real juicy squares. You see the eval bar just twinge there. Niemann, perhaps the dust is settling and he can sort of break away with a bit of an advantage. Knight h4 is an incredible try. If you take the pawn, as was done in the game, we then see knight f3 as that square is no longer guarded. King h1, only move. You can't take at all, you just can't allow this. You will get butchered, you will not survive. Hans quite obviously doesn't blunder that and goes king h1 instead. Gobble a pawn. Rather than taking the knight, you might wonder. Still reasonable for white. But queen f4, king h1, and there's some scope for counterplay with black. g3, and this does look quite scary. So instead we get cd5 and then g3 played anyway. We now take on e6, the queen is hit. And g2, a very courageous attempt there from Bartel. Queen hanging. Just crashes straight through. Knight g2. Don't take the knight and blunder this. So the knight takes, pawn takes, king g1, and believe it or not, this king is perfectly safe. This is covered. This rook isn't breaking through when this pawn is in the way. Queen f4, rook takes e4, queen takes f2, take, promote, king e2, and a real courageous attempt here from Bartel to try anything to confuse the situation. Rook g2, king d1, and look at these rooks. Bartel is just one move away from crashing in. He has so many checks at his disposal. But interestingly, out of all these pieces for white, the winning one, the key asset here, is the e-pawn. e7, white just wins the game. You can't stop the promotion. You may think, okay, the rook's covered here. The queen covers this, and you have enough material with these rooks aptly placed to see the promotion through. So, two winning moves, queen h6 or e7, queen h6 with the idea of playing e7 on the next move, so all dependent on this. Here Hans Niemann goes Queen takes c2. Completely winning. Should he find e7 or queen h6? Always good to give a check. He acknowledges perhaps that he will need to sacrifice his queen for a rook, but just does it in the complete wrong way, because after rook takes c2, knight takes, knight e3, king d2, queen f2, king d3, knight takes c2, d5. Cash in now. White has so many pawns, but it isn't enough. This is a very difficult endgame to win, admittedly, but it only takes one inaccuracy from white for the whole position to crumble, and that is exactly what happens. The queen just shuffling around, getting just the right arrangement, getting the king closer to stop the pawns promoting. King f5 here, pinning the pawn, a few more checks, cash in, and that's it. That is it. Hans Niemann completely winning. The queen takes c2. Now it is an old doom and gloom for Hans, of course. In the final round of the tournament he did beat Gukesh Domoraju. Spoiler alert, that is Gukesh's FIDE circuit chances from this tournament completely wiped out thanks to that. So he finishes on an even score, loses about 3 rating points all in all, considering he was ill partway through the event. Not bad going from him, really. But that'll take us to our final game. Jules Moussard versus Shreyas Royal. Now Shreyas Royal, this is his penultimate round game. He needs 1.5 out of 2 to secure himself a GM norm in which he would finish on 4 out of 9. Which is an incredible performance considering the guy's only 2400 against a 2650 strength field. Again, we're 28 moves in here. And the position's interesting because we see this interlocking structure here, even symmetrical pawn structure, very congested in the middle. So it's just a case of shuffling and who can poke and prod. Royal takes one step back with knight f8, and it isn't immediately clear why this is inaccurate, but after knight h3, g4, take, and knight f2, who's guarding the pawn? That then becomes an issue. Bishop f5, bishop e2, and there's just no way, we cash in. Now, as I say, Shreyas Royal cannot afford to lose this game. He needs to at least draw to keep his chances for a Grandmaster norm intact, in which he plays Michael Adams in the last round with white. Knight f5, inaccurate again. h4, we're just bulldozing now with Moussard. The knight drops back, we trade. And f5 is not the right idea from Royal here. Queen f4, stifling his momentum. Rook g8, king f2, bishop e8, king e3, bishop d8, and just guess where the king's going next. Justifying the entire maneuver, king d3. But you notice the question mark there. Not right. Because of knight f6. An incredible defensive resource there from Shreyas Royal. If you take. Oops. I bet that's a tactic you haven't seen before. Unrooting the queen from her cushy position here. And your best option is to do this. And this is completely losing, it's not even worth playing on. So knight f6 we see from Shreyas Royal. Rook g1, Moussard acknowledges the danger and guards the pawn. But now who's booting this knight here? This is an incredible outpost. King c2 now. And queen h7 from royal. Suddenly his luck has turned. He went from borderline losing to now being in the hot seat. King b3 now, Musard not giving up on his idea. But a nice move now. Bishop h4. Nice and simple. Can't allow that. So bishop c3. Knight g3. Possibly the worst move to take the piece with. Computer wants the rook or the bishop to take the precedent. But knight works. Bishop f3. Rook g6. Rook g2. Queen h6 looking for a queen trade. Now that royal is up a pawn. Bishop d2. Bishop g5. Take the knight, take the bishop. Now queen trade all but guaranteed. Rook g2. Queen h6. Take, take. And when the dust settles, Shreyas Royal is just up a pawn and has the bishop pair in this endgame. And this knight is going to take a long while to be able to get back in. Even when it does, the bishop can cover everything. So the question is, can he convert this endgame? Bishop d2, cut some squares off the king. King g7 has to be the idea, just bring the king in. Musard voluntarily gives up a pawn. Now down 2 pawns. King d3. Bishop e1. Bishop e2. Bishop f2, hitting the pawn. And Musard has no option but to shuffle. He's just moving his bishop back and forth. As mentioned before, the knight reaches its holy square, but bishop d7 is still there. Knight f7, and that pawn is just going. Bit of dancing around. This pawn falls. Musard gains one back, but check. And we cash in here. And ladies and gentlemen, the game is over. Shreyas Royal has just beaten Jules Musard with the black pieces. And I have no more games to show you, but Shreyas Royal, in the final round, did make a very simple draw against Michael Adams and secures his second Grandmaster norm with a 4 out of 9 performance at the London Chess Classic. I mean, what an incredible performance from him. You know, beating Grandmasters 250 points his superior is incredible. And with Gukesh's loss and Adams also drawing in the last round, Michael Adams becomes the first English player to ever win the London Chess Classic. I mean, that's just an insane sentence in itself. We haven't had an English player ever win the London Chess Classic. We've had Magnus win it, we've had Hikaru's won it, I believe Wang Hao has won it, all kinds of top players. Well, Michael Adams takes the throne. And that wraps up an incredibly chaotic tournament. In terms of the FIDE circuit with Gukesh, it only gets worse. There is I believe an 8-player tournament now being hosted in Chennai. Arjun Erigaisi there as well. So Gukesh and Erigaisi have one last roll of the dice. We'll be tuning in with them to see how successful they are. Linnea Dominguez currently playing in Spain, hoping to try and take the rating spot. Oh, it's all kicking off, it's crazy, but thank you all for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.